Once upon a time, before everyone had a computer in their pocket, we used to do our homework in notebooks with pen or paper. And as a teacher, sometimes the joke is that a kid would say, the dog ate my homework, right? The dog ate my notebook that my homework is in, and that's why I can't give it to you right now. Now, any of us, I think, would agree that a teacher hearing that excuse would be well within their rights to say, I don't believe you. Right? Now, might there be some terrible miscarriages of justice where a poor innocent kid was either punished or just not believed when actually the dog had eaten the notebook that their homework was in? Yeah, I guess so. But all of us would agree, and this is the important term, that it's much more likely that the kid just didn't do their homework than that the kid actually did their homework and then their dog ate the notebook that the homework was in. Now, we do this kind of reasoning all the time. I want to do a series of videos here on a topic I'm calling mental sharpness, which I think often gets overlooked in the subculture we're in. And by the subculture we're in, I mean people who are interested in yoga and meditation and ecstatic dance and body work. We tend to really value embodiment, which is so beautiful and so important, and we tend to value being in your heart. But very often there's this false dichotomy that says you can't be embodied and you can't be in your heart, and you can't be like spiritually open if you're also mentally sharp. And I think that's a mistake. I think that we really can be fully integrated human beings who value and develop and practice at all the different levels of what we are. But enough about that. There's a principle I want to talk about today called Occam's razor. And what I just shared about the kid and the dog and the homework and the teacher is an example of Occam's razor. The name is not important, and the historical origin of it is not important, but if you're interested, William of Occam was this guy in the 1200s and 1300s who made this observation. He was a theologian and a philosopher, and this observation that he made, which has come to be called Occam's razor, has been tried and tested and found to be true. It's been respected ever since then, and it was part of how we established ways of thinking about scientific methods. So it's been a very valuable and sort of long-standing observation. What did he say? Occam essentially said that when you're trying to find out what is actually true about the world, and you come up against two competing explanations, the one that is simpler is going to be more likely to be true than the one that is convoluted or complicated. Now, that may have you feeling suspicious right away, like, but the world is nuanced, the world is complicated. Surely oversimplifying everything doesn't get you closer to truth, and of course you're right about that. But here's some of the language that he uses that I think is really helpful in terms of clarifying what he's saying. Occam says, it is wise not to needlessly multiply assumptions. How good is that, right? It's wise not to needlessly multiply assumptions. When you look at an explanation or an argument that is trying to make a case for how the world is objectively, right? It's trying to put together facts and evidence and come up with an explanation of how they all hang together. The more assumptions, the more badly evidenced or speculative, or just something that people are wildly jumping to in terms of making connections, the more of those there is in a particular explanation or argument, the less likely it is to be true. Yeah? So now it makes more sense, right? So simplicity in this case really means the more each line of the explanation has a clarity about it, is based on sound evidence, makes logical sense in the context of the other lines of the argument, the more you can go, you know what, I'm thinking that's more likely to be true. You still have to discover if it actually is true, but this is about likelihood. This is about how we make really important choices about how to spend our time and energy and not go down convoluted, winding, rabbit hole dead ends that become less and less likely to be true the more the assumptions get stacked one on top of the other into this very wobbly structure. And what Occam's razor can really help us to do is to identify that when we see it and move on, and keep being drawn to explanations that have what is called parsimony, or a kind of elegant simplicity about them. If you know anyone who's really passionate about science or math, they will have told you that there's this beautiful thing. Very often, again, in our subculture, science and math gets this bad rap as being really dry and boring and cold and one-dimensional and reductionist or something like that. But really, if you talk to people who are passionate about science or math, they'll tell you that there's this powerful, emotional, intuitive thing that gets activated when you come across an explanation or a hypothesis that has a beautiful simplicity about it. It has what they'll refer to as an elegance about it. And when you study math or science, you find that the breakthrough theories or theorems or equations, right, that end up helping humanity to understand something about the universe in a very profound and exciting way, they can usually be stated in really simple, elegant terms that has this adamantine, this kind of diamond-like, multifaceted but clear and lucid and solid quality about it, where any way you turn it, it still holds up, it still reflects the light the same way. And it's kind of at the center of a web of other true statements that all connect back to the same central truth in a way that's coherent. And anyone who really gets into science or math, or I would argue mental sharpness, critical thinking, logical reasoning, that is a sort of unmistakable resonance that you find. And of course, the intuitive resonance is not enough. You then need to be careful and look at it carefully and critically and examine your own biases. But still, there's this, the more well-versed you get in this stuff, the more you find there's a way that you're like, ah, yes, this style of reasoning, this way of analyzing the evidence, this structure in the argumentation has the ring of truth about it, because there aren't all of these loose-ended assumptions and poorly evidenced claims being made that I'm already either skeptical about or I already know have been shown not to be true. And so the rest of the argument is not strong and doesn't hang together well, right? Those are two different qualities of reasoning style. If you love music, there are two different compositions. One is melodious and rhythmic and speaks to something about the human condition, right? I'm getting very metaphorical and poetic here, bear with me. One of them has that thing in it, like a great symphony or an incredible song by the Beatles, for example, right? And the other is cacophonic and lacking in rhythm and doesn't have a melody that is memorable, right? And has a chordal structure that just doesn't make sense and doesn't take you anywhere satisfying. That's another way of thinking about these two competing explanations, where Occam says, choose the elegant one, choose the simple one, choose the one that seems sound in its structure and doesn't needlessly multiply assumptions. Hopefully, for someone who's listening to this and watching this, and thank you if you made it to the end, this provides an interesting kind of compass point in terms of looking at the world around us right now in these bizarre times where there are all manner of explanations that we do well to be able to step back from and go, that seems really, really unlikely to be true. I'm going to devote my time and energy in different ways to what makes more sense, right? And apply mental sharpness in this way that is for the good of all of us.